15. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, viewers and listeners from across the world. Let me also start by joining you to pay respect to our late friend and brother, Ekpenyong. In fact, with what I've gone through in the last 14 days, I think I understand what it is like between life and death. For 5 days, I couldn't eat. So I was just imagining so many things in my head. But thank God I am back on my feet. I was discharged yesterday. I am doing well. I'm trying to pick up as much as I can. Let me also commend Mr. Balogu for his contribution. He spoke extensively well, like very, very well as far as festivals are concerned in Nigeria. I think he took his time to do his proper research work. But then there's one or two things I want to also point out, as much as I don't want to do repetitions based on the things he has said already. When my brother, Mr. Ikechi, reached out to me and said he wanted me to be part of this program, tourism and festival and tourism, first question I asked myself was like, did I tell him I was doing something on festivals? But I'm not sure I did. But actually, for I think about 7-8 months now, my Center for Research, I've been working on a book which we titled 1,000 Festivals of Nigeria. And amazingly, when we started, I personally was in doubt if we have up to 1,000 festivals. But again, considering the fact that we have over 250 ethnic groups as a country, considering the fact that we are over close to 250 million individuals, there's bound to happen that we are supposed to have quite a lot of different people with different festivals, different cultures, different traditions. And one way that we have been able to display most of these things is through those festivals. Amazingly, based on the research work we're doing on the 1,000 festival books we're working on, we discovered that, in particular, one of the oldest kingdom in Nigeria, Ile-Ife, has over 400 festivals. And I tried to pick one or two of them, the ones I hope I will be able to pronounce their names very well. The Agbo Festival, the Oro Ayegun Festival, the Abadu Obaoni Festival, the Ilaje Isutitu Festival, Igo Efo Festival, quite a whole lot of them within one particular community. And this is not just restricted to Ile-Ife. Other areas in Nigeria have there's the Odum Festival among the Jaws, where they worship the African python. There's the Olushu Kuto Festival among the Kerekiti. Now, in this particular one, amazingly enough, they worship rock, and they believe that the rock is what actually have let them go in and preserve their community over the years. There's the Sea Festival from Kwara State, the Ku Festival among the Igbiras of Kogi State, Oholo Festival from Sokoto, Nguwa Fishing Festival, Aragongo Fishing Festival, Owu Aroso Festival, which is among the Calabaris. And interestingly, among the festivals we have, the Owu Aroso Festival is held every 26 years. So there's a possibility that a particular generation might not even get to witness it, depending on when the person is born and how the growth is. There's the Doba Festival, Arubungo, of course, like we all know about Arubungo Festival, or Shoshugo Festival, and the rest of them. The Doba. But interestingly, among all these things, I had the privilege as a young boy back in 1977 to attend Festa, the Festival of Arts and Culture. And that was like one room, one spot. Well, of course, it was held in different places of Nigeria. But for those of us who had the privilege of being at the National Theatre at the time, we saw quite a lot of festivals, not just that of Nigeria, neighboring African countries, and some foreign countries also came to display what they have. I am from Abia State, and in my place where I come from, we have the Ekpe Festival. In 1984, it fell within my community, within my household, to host the Ekpe Festival. Now, there's one unique thing about the Ekpe Festival. There's a festival that we hold annually every December, most times, sometimes in January. And it involves the masquerade going around the town, displaying his dancing steps and accuracy to the drums. And then he had to slaughter a goat with one cut. Now, this is not something that is quite common, because before you're allowed to put on the masquerade for a festival, you have to do a whole lot of training. if you eventually try to cut the head of the goat and you do not succeed in cutting it at once, it becomes a shame to you, to your people, to your community, because it will be used against you, not just for that year, but for several other years to come. And these are the things that have made people, communities quite unique across the country. And for us now, if we are now looking at the possibility of making it go global, of course, one problem, if you ask me, that I've seen in the last 15, 20 years that I involve myself in tourism going around the country. In fact, let me also mention, let me use this privilege to say that I've been able to document over 600 tourist sites across the country. And one thing I've noticed in all of them is that same problem that Nigeria as a nation is having, which is the maintenance culture. Communities have their festivals. They want to do it their own way. But by the time maybe state governments or local governments are involved and start getting investors, we start having crises. Just the same thing Balogo was trying to explain when he was talking. So there have to be a system where those things are well organized without taking away the spirituality in most of this festival. Because once that is taken off, then there's actually no value. It's not just about us gathering and dancing, but let us also look at what is that unique thing about those cultures, those festivals that we are celebrating there. Now, generally speaking, among the Igbos, we have the Chupu. Chupu is like the God, the creator of all things, who is visible and invisible at any given time. Now, besides the Chupus, the Igbos have many objects of religious belief and worship that could be classified into three different categories. We have God, we have non-human spirits, and we have the ancestors. And these constitute two broad categories of spirits to whom homage can be paid for. And homage is always paid most of the time by this festival that we talked about. We have the pure spirits, which is the spirit that have never had the human body. We also have the spirits of the dead, the living dead among the humans. And these are the kind of things that the Igbos also worship. In the first category, we have, like I mentioned earlier, we have Chupu, the creator, the maker of all things. Then after Chupu, there's a group of spirits known as the Chi. The Chi is more of your personal God. The first order of spiritual beings, since Chupu himself is the supreme God. We also have Chi Upu. Now, there's a difference between Chupu and Chi Upu. Chi Upu here now becomes a mighty small God or a mighty Chi. Then there is the next class of non-human spirits known as the Arosi, the Agbara, or Iye, depending on how you're looking at it. These are numerous. There are numerous Igbo societies, but most of the popular ones among these ones that I've mentioned will include something like the sky deities, what we call Anyanwu, the god of the sun, the air deity, Abaruku, we have the earth deity, Allah, we have the water deities, Usimiri, Orasi, the Imo, Idemiri, and so many others. Now, this is not just restricted to Igbo land, it's same thing in most other tribes and cultures across the country. We need to preserve these festivals for generations yet unborn, because now with the influx of people living for most of our cities, some of these things are dying off gradually. And even the ones that are existing, they don't follow the real format in which they were created for. And for me in particular, because I do more of history, I want to see a situation, which is actually one of the reasons why we embarked on working on the book project we're working on. I want to see a situation where documenting the genesis of these festivals, how did they start, what is actually involved, what is the unique thing about these festivals within those communities, before we can now start looking at how to raise funds. Of course, for every other thing we do now in Nigeria, everybody's focusing on how to make money. But I think it's beyond making money. It's more of, we need to document our stories. We need to tell our stories properly to the younger ones who will be coming after us. Having said that, let me also divert a little bit and look at tourism generally in Nigeria. Did a couple of crazy tours. I in particular, one is when I went to Kuta Kingdom. Kuta is in Kwara State, and I did a letter to the Kwara State government. I did a letter to the Oyo State government. Those letters were never acknowledged. And in those letters, I emphasized on the fact that in Okuta, there's the remains of the Oyo Empire fence still standing. I mean, if we're going to be talking about Ile-Ife, Oyo, and the rest, these these are the few remains of the beauties of those history that need to be properly documented. And all I was asking them was that government should get to those places and probably put a canopy, or if not even a canopy, put a small room, protect the remains of those fences, so that it's not just going to be us telling younger people that, okay, there was a fence. And you can imagine if part of the original fence is in Kwara State. Of course, most younger people will not want to not believe that they want to start again because they are looking at the current state creation, not seeing the old empire as it existed some hundreds of years ago. So these are the kind of things that we need to start working on, and we need to start looking for how to preserve them so we can tell a proper story for generations yet to come. Mr. Keshi, I don't know if you have specific questions. I think that will actually be of help. I'm trying not to repeat most of the things that Balogo said. Like I said when I started, he did excessively beautiful, and I love his contribution. I should go ahead.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so having said that about the Okuta Kingdom, the project you talked about, which you just mentioned about in Enugu, sounds also quite interesting because I've done a tour of Enugu State, and in most of the tours I did also, I realized that most of our tour guides and tour narrators were doing a whole lot of injustice to our history, which is one of the things I see on social media every day. Unfortunately, Facebook pulled down my Facebook account, which is about 21 years or so, with over 27,000 followers, and I lost quite a whole lot of history. I've seen people, let me use the word distort history because they want to tell a story that will be more favorable to them or to their community or to their tradition. It's time we need to have a system where we can stop this and tell history the correct way. I remember when you were talking just now, you mentioned about Badagry trying to sell four-story building. For that particular project in question, I've argued about it so many times. I think at the point I was actually getting into some challenges with Lagos State, some of the Lagos State Commissioners of Tourism, where I keep emphasizing that the building in Badagry could not have been the first-story building in Nigeria. It is actually an insult if you say that building is the first-story building in Nigeria. But if you describe it as the first colonial story building in Nigeria, yeah, probably might be right because Benin, the city of Benin had quite a lot of story building before it was destroyed. There is the one in Katsina still standing, over 400 years old, still standing till date. So we need to be telling our story correctly because that is the only way we can actually sell what we have. I remember also that I was one of those who promoted the Hanging Lake in Isseyin when I did a comparison pitch with that of Scotland. Is it Scotland also? Yeah. So when I did a comparison of it, saying that the one in Scotland was receiving over 1 million visitors per annum, and that of Isseyin, in fact, as of the time I visited, I went on the Hanging Lake and came down, and nobody interrupted me. Nobody asked me who I am. Who actually asked me why was I climbing it. So imagine the kind of resources that the local government or the state or even the community would have been missing because there was no proper care of those things, no proper of who comes there, who goes out, and what payment is being made. So these are the reasons I had. I am one person who, because I do a lot of history, I do tourism. I believe there's so much money in tourism and it needs to be properly done. I am not going to specifically mention them, but I've been to a couple of museums because, okay, I run a museum of Nigerian history in Lagos. I've been a couple of museums when we were doing a project with the Kote Institute called Connected the Dot. And I found myself teaching the curators of those museums their own history. And to be honest, it was a little bit embarrassing, but at some point we just walk into a museum and the curators there will be, oh, Dr. James is here, let's not talk, let him tell. I said, no, this is your museum, you need to tell us your story. And if for whatever reason we find it wanting, then we can look at it. I don't know it all. All I just do is I do a whole lot of research on some of these historical artifacts. So if you tell your story and I think it's not right, then we can look at it together and look at maybe you are the one that is right or I'm the one that is right. But the point here is that we are having people, mostly those who work in government museums, get a little bit lazy, not taking time. Of course, they believe that at the end of the month, the salary is going to come. So they don't really take time to do independent research what they're supposed to do in the things they have. You're not going to compare that with what I'm doing in Lagos, my history museum, where I am specifically studying practically every artifact that I have and looking at how did I acquire them, what is the history behind them, and how do we preserve them for years to come. So that makes it a little bit unique. That's the same thing I'm also looking at, that the museums across the country should also get involved in doing. Our festivals need to be properly documented. In fact, just like Balogo said, if there's an atlas of festivals, we know, okay, by January 4th, there's this particular festival in this community, by January 2nd, by January 3rd, by December, then a visitor coming to Nigeria, for example, will be properly prepared. I said, okay, I think this is the particular festival I'm interested in. Okay, I want to visit is it Igua? They call it an IGUE festival in Benin. Okay, this festival comes up around July. So let me prepare myself by April, May, June. Then by July, I should be in Nigeria and I'll be in Benin. But if those things are not properly documented, we're waiting for when probably somebody will post it on social media. Most of the times, it takes a lot of people unaware and they're not fully prepared to make those visits. So for me, I suggest strongly that we should consider a proper documentation of what we have for the future. Thank you, sir.